Thanks, everybody. Really hard to follow that energy, Eddie. Thanks so much, but I'm going to try and keep it amped up. I know we're at the last talk of the day. I hope to keep it exciting and interesting for you. As Eddie mentioned, my name is Dan Driscoll. I'm a developer. I write software. In between the sessions here, I've actually been fixing bugs and issuing pull requests, so that's what I do. I work on the bot framework team at Microsoft Research inside of Fuse Labs. If you're using any of the tools that I talked about today, tell me about it. I want to fix them if they suck, and I'm going to try and make them as great as possible. Just to give you an overview of the next 25 minutes, this is a slow dissolve. Here's what I'll be telling you. I'll be talking a little bit about artificial intelligence, and specifically that AI is not magic. Instead, AI can be used to build capabilities into your bots and conversational platforms, be they bots or even not bots that are put in other products. And that once you have a bot, then you can give it reach to actually reach your customers. And then to achieve these two things, to achieve the second item there, we at Microsoft have a bunch of AI services. And these services are compact, they're predictable, they're configurable, and they're there to solve a different problem. But to kind of lead into all of this, I want to give you a little bit of background about the bot framework. This is the bot framework webpage. If you go to botframework.com, this is the product that I helped to build. I want to give you some background on this because I think it flows pretty nicely into the rest of the presentation. At Microsoft Research Fuse Labs, we were working on a lot of bots. And when we started building bots, we found we had to solve the same problems over and over and over again. Parsing natural language, connecting these bots up to a bunch of services, it was a real drag on our team. And we wanted to produce the tools that allow you to make bots and then share them with you so that you can use them to write your own really great bots. So what that means is that everything I'm going to talk about today is stuff that we've built around conventions, stuff that we've understood, what it takes to connect a bot up to 5 or 6 different services, or what is the best and easiest way to process natural language. But in learning all of these things, I mentioned we wrote a bunch of great bots. How many of you know of some of the bots that Microsoft has released in the last 6 or 8 months? I see a few hands going up, right? We've released some Zork bots, right? Have you seen Zork bot and the Pizza bot? Haven't heard of these? I feel like a Zork bot and Pizza bot are like the hello world of bots. But I'm sure you're all thinking about Tay, right? Tay was a chat bot which was released on Twitter for a little while, and Tay had a few issues and is in a bit of a timeout right now. But Tay and actually Xiaoice. So how many of you have heard of Xiaoice? Xiaoice is a predecessor to Tay that's actually still running in China, has like 40 million users, and has kind of the same sort of conversational logic as Tay does, which is that you can talk to Xiaoice and Tay, and they can hold a conversation with you, and they can play games and things. When you look at a bot like Tay and Xiaoice, it's really easy to think of artificial intelligence as like this big service, this big complex thing that you sort of spit text into, and it does some really magical computations, and it spits text out again. And that seems a little bit difficult to achieve at times, especially for writing simpler bots, right? If you look at the bots that are out right now, I think it's easy to look at the spectrum and see AI on one side, things like Tay and Xiaoice and these really complex conversational bots, and then simple bots on the right side, bots that just take slash commands and do one thing and are really predictable. This is the world of bots right now, but I actually think it can be a lot better. And as developers, I like us to think a little bit more in these terms, where you have got bots that have maybe a more emotional side, you have bots that have a little bit more transactional side, but everything is intelligent. Maybe entertainment is a better category on the left there. It doesn't really matter what your bot does. It can have intelligence built into it. I think a really good example is if you go to a convenience store, the interaction that you have with a convenience store clerk is really transactional, right? You ask for an item, or maybe you pay for the item. The clerk gives you, tells you how much it is. You exchange your money, and then you leave. But you can walk up to a clerk in a convenience store, and you can say, "Hey, do you know that your lights in your parking lot are out? Right? They're broken outside." That piece of text, that question that you've given to the clerk is actually a really complex thing that needs a lot of intelligence to understand. And actually, I don't even know of any tools right now that can understand that a rhetorical question like that has been asked, and that the convenience store, if you had a convenience store bot, that the bot shouldn't actually answer, yes, I did know, or no, I didn't know. Really, what you're trying to do in that situation is you're trying to give politely the person a hint that, hey, maybe you should go check on these things. But I think that kind of intelligence is the kind of thing you can put into any bot. Help at any time, assistance when you get stuck. Intelligence as a bunch of tools is something we can put in any bot, even the really simple ones, even the ones we think of as being just simple slash command bots. And so instead of thinking about things in the broad, like Xiaoice and Tay context, where it's like maybe there's some AI that we throw some text to, I want you to think instead well, we'll just say AI isn't magic. That was kind of what that was. I want to skip instead to thinking about AI as a set of predictable services that you can use. And that's how we think about them at Microsoft, and that's what I'm going to show you a few examples of here. To give you, I think, maybe a clear example, because an example is probably a simpler way of explaining this, let's take a bot that we want to build. Let's say we want to write a bot that's going to answer questions about stock prices. We'll send a question to the bot like, hey, what is the stock price of some particular stock? And then the bot will respond back, and it will say, oh, the price is whatever today. Maybe it can answer some questions about what the market is. So here's an example for our spec for our bot, right? You're writing a bot. The stock bot's going to look up stock prices. What's the market up? Is the market up or down? What's the price of whatever? And if you're an implementer, if you're trying to build this bot, you look at this input and you now realize you have to build a bunch of natural language skills into your bots. Have any of you written a bot that processes input like this? Maybe only a couple, yeah, 2 or 3 hands, a few, right? I've written a bunch of these, and they're really hard to write, especially if you were writing them a couple years ago when there weren't really great tools out there to process text. You would end up with code like this, if this looks familiar. This is a stack of regexes that you would have to write to process all of the commands that I'd put on the prior screen. And you can imagine how impossible it is to maintain this. There are some things we could do to simplify this code, certainly, but this is pretty much what you end up with if you're trying to do this natural language processing on your own. For those of you who can read this, can you see any bugs in this? It's impossible to know. And in fact, I know. I intentionally put bugs in here. I put one right here. There's no case-insensitive marker on that regex. And so if someone capitalizes a word in that particular line, it's not going to match. So there's a better way to do this. And one of the services that we have as part of Microsoft Suite is called LUIS, the Language Understanding Intelligence Service. You don't have to remember that yet. I have a table in a little bit that I'll show you. But I'm actually going to show you how easy it is to configure LUIS to accept text like this and turn it into what we want, which is a simple statement of what is the user trying to do. In that first slide that I'd shown about the stock bot, I'd given like 2 or 3 examples, right? Is the market up or down? What's the stock price? And then maybe we could do something more sophisticated, but we'll just start with those 2. And so in this, I'm actually going to show you from scratch what it's like to start to create an application in LUIS. Can everybody read this? Is this large enough? This is not that bad. So if you go to LUIS.ai, which is one of Microsoft's cognitive services tools, you can create a language model that allows you to process text like that. Actually, I just realized, is it possible to switch the mics? No? Yes? I'll hold this like this. I'm going to do this from scratch. I've actually never used this. Oh, uh-oh, I am not on Wi-Fi. Let me see if I can hop on Wi-Fi really quickly. Wow, this is a really awesome service, and let me tell you how this works. When we sign in to this web page, we're given a really simple console where we actually just type in those phrases. And if we switch back to that slide deck really briefly, I would actually just type in these 4 phrases. I would say, what's the market up to today? And I would type in, is the market up or down? And what's the price of Tesla? And then it would categorize those. And I would say, oh, this is a market up or down intent. I would say this is essentially the enum that's associated with this kind of text. And I would do the same thing with this one and the same thing with this one. And after entering just 2 or 3 phrases that cover what I think users will be able to say, LUIS.ai will start to learn what user, it will learn the patterns that users will use, and it will be able to accept a whole bunch of different inputs, even though I've only given it a couple of inputs here. So it's a really powerful tool and incredibly easy to configure. Even easier if you actually have Wi-Fi and you can connect to the website. But I would encourage you to try it out. It really does take only like 5 minutes to get set up and get all of this coded in. It's very, very straightforward. So this is the first of the services that I wanted to tell you about. And so once we have LUIS.ai, you're ready to put this into your bot. And it's important to think about where this fits in relation to all of your existing code. So let's start out with your stock bot. Let's say you have a stock web backend that you're coding everything to. You have some business logic and a web service, and you're going to start to add something like LUIS to it. I mentioned earlier that artificial intelligence is a little bit about capabilities and reach. And so I think of LUIS.ai and their competitors. If you've heard of Wit.ai and API.ai, they all kind of do the same thing. They're all different versions of the same natural language processing capability. This is a component that you can add into your application to give it the capability of natural language processing. And when you do this, it's not like you're wiring your application up to this big black box that you don't really know what the AI is inside of it. This is a really straightforward tool that's essentially a regex on steroids. It's very straightforward, it's controllable, it's configurable, you can understand what it's doing, and it's predictable. So natural language processing is one of these. Speech processing is another one. If you have a bot that you want to connect up to voice calling, which I know Twilio offers a calling endpoint that you can use. Other services like Skype have these as well. We have got tools to do real-time speech processing as well as translation. Conversational skills is a really important thing for smart bots to have. If you have a simple bot that all it does is send and receive one message, like for instance, like you have a bot that lets you kick off a build, that's a really easy thing to code. But if you need any multi-turn conversational complexity, if you have to handle that, conversational skills are important. So let's say that in our stock bot example, we actually wanted to ask the bot, what's the price of a particular stock? And if we hadn't specified it, the bot will say, hey, you didn't give me a stock name, or the stock name that you specified was invalid. Would you like to correct it? If you had to code this on your own, it'd be a huge spaghetti mess. And so conversational skills are a way to, we have tools for conversational skills that allow you to avoid that spaghettification of your code. And then lastly, vision. If you're sending and receiving images or video, the ability to process that and see what's in that is a capability that you can add to your application. Once you've got all these capabilities, you can then connect your bot up to different channels, and you can give your bot reach. You can put your bot, your business logic, where your users are, be it SMS or chat, like Skype or Facebook Messenger, MMS or image. Many of the chat channels that are out there allow you to send and receive images, audio, video, like again on Skype, or audio on Twilio calling. And once you've got that, now you have a complete bot. You have not only your business logic, but you've wrapped it up in all of these things that make it intelligent. You've never hooked it up to one big black box intelligent application appliance, but you've given it all of these skills by integrating these services one by one. We have a ton of tools. We actually have 21 different APIs inside of Microsoft's cognitive services, and I'll give you the table of a few of those here in a second, and a couple in the bot framework to make your bot intelligent. Okay, so here's a few of these. So I talked about in my ill-fated internet-required demo of Lewis.ai, right? This is essentially a tool that gives you regex support, but better. You don't have to code everything by hand. You just have to type in a few phrases and press enter, and you can have the entire model trained up in just minutes. But we have other items too. So I kind of have these broken down in terms of where they are on the website. The top two of these are tools that I've helped contribute to. We have the bot connector, which is a part of the bot framework, which allows you to connect a bot up to many different channels. We support Facebook Messenger, Skype, Twilio, of course, Slack, email. We have a whole list. It's up to like 10 now, 10 or 12. It allows you to write a bot once using our simple REST API message format, and then run it on any of those different platforms. Now, the bot connector is a completely open system, which means that it doesn't matter what language you wrote your bot in. You could have it written in C# or Java or Python or Perl or COBOL or whatever. As long as it talks our REST API format, we'll talk to your endpoint. The next bit right here is the bot builder, and I'll show you a little bit more about what the bot builder is in a minute. But the bot builder is an SDK that helps you de-spaghettify really complex conversational code. And it may not seem like this is a big deal until you've actually had to write a complex multi-turn dialogue. Actually collecting input from the user and then handling things like cancel or help, or I'd like to go back a step and change the toppings that I put on my pizza, that code is really challenging to write. And we had to write this so many times that we decided, we should package this up in a library and release it. And so we did. And that's what the bot builder is all about. It's entirely open source. It's available on GitHub. I'll show it to you here in a moment. Lewis.ai we've talked about. WebLM is a great tool for doing word breaking. So like for instance, cracking apart Twitter hashtags. If you need that intelligence support, there's an API for that. You just spit a hashtag into it and it tells you what it thinks it breaks up into. Text analytics, understanding sentiment analysis. How people are, it has things like key phrase detection, topic detection. I haven't used this one in detail, but I think the sentiment analysis part could be really handy. Linguistic analysis. How many of you saw Google's announcement of Parsey McParseface recently? I think they win on the naming front. Their tool has got the best name. But our linguistic analysis tool does effectively the same thing. It's a sentence decomposition tool. If any of you are huge fans of sentence diagramming back in elementary school, you'll recognize what tools like this do. They tell you, if you have the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, it will tell you jumped is the verb, and it will tell you that the dog is really lazy and is always the lazy one in the situation. But these tools are handy if you really need to know what the subjects and verbs are in a particular sentence. And then we have things like our computer vision tools. If you've played around, if you've ever seen CaptionBot, CaptionBot.ai is a fun bot that you can upload an image to, and it will tell you what's in the image. That's a wrapper that just really thinly wraps our computer vision APIs. APIs that you can use with really only a few seconds of sign up, although you do need an internet connection to do that. And then lastly, we have the emotion APIs. Actually, not lastly. Lastly, on this table, we have our emotion APIs, which allow you to detect the types of emotions that people in an image are showing. We actually have a total of 23 of these. So there's the top two up here, and then there are 21 of these APIs spanning text, linguistics, speech, vision. I'm sure there's stuff I'm forgetting. There are a ton of them, and they're all available on Microsoft's Cognitive Services website. Eddie mentioned at the very beginning, this is a rename from Project Oxford. So all of these services, well, many of the services were launched under the Project Oxford name, so if you're familiar with that, they've now turned into Cognitive Services. But let's go into more detail in the second one, the bot builder. So now that we have our simple stock bot, which can use Lewis.ai to recognize what a user is saying, we have to do something with that information. The user has asked us to look up the price of a stock, or to, in this case, maybe just say whether the market is up or down today. So let me show you what the code for that looks like. I'm a Microsoft guy, so I'm sure you're all expecting me to show you code in C#, but we actually do it. Nope. I don't know if that's, I heard someone talking to me. Okay. Oh, what am I doing here? Okay, I know you're all expecting to see C# code, but I will show you instead JavaScript. I mentioned that all of our services are an open platform. Did I do it again? I think I may have to. Yeah, thank you. I spend more time writing code and less time showing it. Oh, good. You just can't read this. Can we blow it up? Awesome. Okay. All right. So all the tools in the Microsoft Bot Framework are open platform tools, and for the parts of the SDK where we actually provide code, it's available in both Node.js and C#. So I'm going to show you the Node code because I think this will be more familiar for most of you. Very straightforward stuff. There's only a little bit of setup where I pull in the bot builder itself and our stock service wrapper for some REST API that we're going to call. And then there's a little bit of setup here where I say, hey, I'm going to use Lewis.ai to inform the logic inside of my application. So that's what this line is right here. And it's got this endpoint, which is an endpoint that you would have seen on the Lewis.ai demo. It just shows it right there. You copy and paste it, you stick it in your application. It takes 10 seconds. We do a little bit of setup here for this thing called a dialogue, which is what controls the actual conversation flow within your service. And then we essentially say that there's a root dialogue here. This is not so important. Once we get into it, though, if you remember, Lewis.ai is a tool for making, it's a regex system on steroids, right, that turns natural language text into a set, I think of it as like a set of enum values. And so we just put the enum value names in here. So in the Lewis.ai console, we would have defined this thing, this intent, called market up or down. And the user could have typed many different things to express that. They could say, hey, what's the market doing today? Or is the market up or down? Or what is the status of the market? And assuming we had trained our model properly, Lewis.ai would detect that, and it would send a message. It would essentially respond back to my bot here and say, hey, what the user meant when they typed this phrase was this thing, mark it up or down. And then at that point, all we have to do is say session.send, and the bot builder SDK sends that response back to the user on whatever channel that they connected on. So in this case, this user could have been on SMS, they could have been on Facebook Messenger, they could have been on Skype, they could have been on email, it doesn't matter. If you're using the bot builder SDK and you're using the bot connector, you can connect to all of them at the same time. So this is a really simple example. Let's take a more complex example. Let's say that our our user wanted to know what the price of a stock is. Now, this can be complicated because the user may actually not have given us the name of a stock price, right? They may have said, "What's the name of blank?" or "Give me the price. Give me the price." And either we didn't recognize what the price, what the ticker symbol was in their phrase, or they gave us some invalid value. So here's an example down here where we say, well, if we've detected that the user has requested a stock price, I'll go up, I'll show you the first block here. All we have to do in our code, and this really is all you need, we first look and we say, hey, did Lewis give us any entities? Did it detect a stock ticker name within the phrase that we gave it? And the way that Lewis works, it actually doesn't end up knowing about essentially what all the possible values of stock ticker symbols are. That would be a real pain to maintain. In fact, it may not be knowable in some cases where you have like dynamic data sets. What it does instead is you train it based on the position of the term within the sentence. So if you have everybody say, hey, what is the price of blank, where blank is the stock symbol, you highlight the blank area and you say, this is where the stock ticker symbol typically is. So anyway, we ask Lewis, hey, did you find any ticker symbols in the sentence? And if it found it, right here in this block on line 40. So if we didn't find it, actually, in this case, we then create a prompt that says, hey, user, we know that you want the stock price, but we didn't detect a ticker symbol. Please tell us which one it is. And what happens in this prompts code is it handles all of the complexity of a user saying cancel or back up, or maybe just sending you blank text. Or if you've coded this up so that there are maybe a few different options of what a user could say. Let's say that you only support, let's say, 2 stocks in your stock system, and you can detect that. There's a way in here for you to actually list out what the possible values are. And this system will handle all of it for you. So the builder.prompts will make sure that the user actually enters a value. And if we did get a symbol, we'll say, we'll just drop through this and drop into the next section. In this next section down here, we actually take the result if the user gave us a ticker symbol, we hang on to the value, and then we actually get the stock price and we send it off. And what we've done now in these 2 simple functions encapsulates a whole ton of complexity that you'd have to implement on your own, again, with things like cancel and help and otherwise. This does it all automatically for you, which I think is really great. So that's the bot builder, right? I think it has a pretty clear purpose, which is to simplify all the complex conversational code within your system, much like the other cognitive services, Lewis.ai and all those other neat speech and vision ones. You should think of these as building blocks that you can add to your business logic to create a fully functional bot. Okay, just talked about the bot builder SDK. Another problem that comes up is often, if you've used bots that are out there, you'll find that they get stuck a lot. How many of you have used a bot and you found that the bot just doesn't know what you're saying? I'm sorry, I don't understand. Please submit again, right? It's really frustrating. And I think that there's a lot of room for us to add intelligence into this part of the bot as well. What I'm going to show you is something that we previewed at our last developer conference, and we haven't yet released it, but it gives you an idea of where Microsoft is going as a company, both in the world of bots, but also in the specific area of technology. What we demoed there was a tool that when you're talking with a bot, in this case this is a Domino's Pizza bot that we were writing, because Pizza bot is something everyone starts out with. When you're talking with a Domino's Pizza bot, if the user gets stuck, and what essentially has happened here is the user has said, hey, send me a pizza to Moscone Center, and the bot has said, I don't recognize Moscone Center. Hang on, let me get an assistant. We now have a console that a call center worker can use to help the user out in this case. Now, this isn't really artificial intelligence, right? This is human intelligence, where a human has now seen what this stuck request is and can then help out. And in this case, we have a piece of technology that allows them to go through and recategorize the request, and this gets dropped back into the machine learning model so that the system gets smarter over time. But fundamentally, what's happening here is that we're bouncing over to real human intelligence. But to the end user, this can be just as powerful as a really sophisticated artificial intelligence system. Ultimately, these bots, whether you're asking a chat bot or you're asking the bot equivalent of the convenience store clerk, who 90% of the time helps you out with your transaction but doesn't necessarily have any really unexpected input or output that you have to deal with, it helps our bots get closer to that, where they have intelligence even though they're not necessarily really broad, really chit-chatty. So we've kind of gone all over the place in this, but I have some resources for you. which is that if you want information about the bot framework, you can find the product that I work on and give me input and feedback, which actually you can do here as well, at botframework.com, which has tools to connect your bot up to services like Twilio, Slack, Skype, Facebook Messenger, Kik, many others. And if you want to learn more about the Microsoft Cognitive Services, which are our AI services, there are 21 of them. There will probably be more in the future. You can go to microsoft.com/cognitive services, and you can follow me on Twitter at the Dan Driscoll with 2 L's at the end. So I will be around for I think a few minutes afterward if you guys have any questions. And otherwise, thank you so much, and thank you for staying for the last session of the day.